23-year-old Melissa Liddle was a mother of two young children at the time of this tragic case. I believe one of her children was around 5 years old, and the other was just a baby, only a few months old at the time. She had her children with her long-term boyfriend, Anthony Ross, and their relationship had its problems, but this was mainly due to Anthony's mental health problems. He believed that Melissa was having an affair, and he became increasingly paranoid about this. In fact, this just took over his head. He thought that maybe it was someone at work. He didn't know. He wasn't sure who it was. He just had something telling him in his head that she was cheating on him. But it was untrue. Melissa was doing nothing wrong at all. Anthony had suffered from paranoid schizophrenia since he was a teenager, and he started to become increasingly unwell. Anthony called his mum up and told her that he was hearing voices. He said that he had a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. He also told his family that time was moving really slowly for him and he didn't feel safe. Now, I did read that he wanted to stay with his dad, but that didn't happen. I don't know why. So, as Anthony's mental health deteriorated, he decided that the best thing for him to do was go to the walk-in centre, which is a medical centre for us. So basically, if we can't get into the doctors, we can go to this walk-in centre, which has doctors and nurses in it, and then they'll provide medical care for us. And then if we need the hospital, we then go to the hospital. So Anthony went to this walk-in centre and he explained to him that he wasn't feeling well, he didn't feel safe, and he was hearing voices. But they just told him that if it doesn't improve, he needs to go to the hospital. And then they sent him away, basically. In the meantime, while he was doing this, Melissa was on the phone to her mum, Tracy. So Melissa was just too excited. The next day would be Mother's Day. So naturally, she had brought her lots of presents for Mother's Day and she just couldn't wait to surprise her mum with them. And she was telling her mum that she's got her presents and she just can't wait for tomorrow to come. Melissa was from a loving, really loving, kind family. She was well loved by family and friends. She was close to her mum, Tracy, like I said, and her stepdad, David. David had brought Melissa up since she was a young child. Melissa also had a sister called Demi and a brother called Liam. While Anthony's mental health was bad, Melissa and Anthony, they were going to spend the night apart. So the kids were around the grandma's and Melissa was going to stay in the family home, and then Anthony was going to go somewhere else, probably around his parents or something. But as the night went on, Melissa, she didn't want to be at home alone. She didn't like it. I guess she's so used to her kids being there that it's a bit lonely in your house at night, isn't it? With no one there. I don't like being at home by myself. So she decided that she was going to phone up or text Anthony and say, "Come home. I don't want to be in the house alone. Can you come home?" And Anthony said yes. So we went round. Then later on in the evening, Anthony called his mum and told her that he was hearing voices again. So the following day came on the 15th of March, which is Mother's Day, and Anthony called his mum up again and said that he loved her and she wasn't to forget that. He also wished her a happy Mother's Day, and then Anthony left Melissa's house. Melissa, like I said, was so deeply loved by her family that when no one had heard from Melissa that day, Tracy was worried. She knew something wasn't right. After all, she'd been on the phone to her daughter the previous day, and Melissa just couldn't wait to see her mum to give her presents. So not hearing from her or not being able to get hold of her was concerning to her mum. Tracy became even more anxious as the day went on, to the point where she just couldn't take any more. So she sent her husband David round and her son Liam. She said, "Go to Melissa's Oaks Avenue in South Shields. Make sure she's all right." Tracy would stay on the phone with Liam while he headed there, and they knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Something just isn't right, Tracy thought. So she told him to break down the door and get in there quick. So that's what they did. They kicked the door in and they went inside. As Tracy was on the phone, she could hear her husband and her son running up the stairs to the bedroom. Liam screamed out loud for his sister, and Tracy's heart sank as everything fell silent. It was truly a horrifying sight. David then told Tracy that their daughter had gone. They'd discovered Melissa's deceased body in that bedroom. Tracy screamed on the phone, "God, no, please." She said that she collapsed on the floor. Liam tried to save his sister by giving her CPR. And as she laid there, he tried so hard to save his sister's life, but it was just too late. Officers and paramedics were called and they attended the property. But sadly, Melissa, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Anthony was nowhere to be seen. But luckily, Anthony was tracked down and arrested. During his police interview, he said that he was asleep just for a few hours. Then he woke up and he said that he kept a large kitchen knife in the bedroom. He said that he carried it around as he walked around the bedroom. He said that he was hearing voices constantly telling him that Melissa was cheating on him. He then told officers that he wasn't sure if it was Melissa in the bed or if someone that looked like Melissa was in the bed. While he was stabbing Melissa, he goes on to say that he thought that he was being watched by people sitting on the bed. He said that he don't recall how many times he stabbed her, but he did stab her and he don't know why. He was then charged with Melissa's murder. But by the time the court case come, after some delays, he pleaded not guilty to murder and he pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility due to his mental health state. The court did accept this and they heard how Tracy and her family were worried sick trying to get a hold of their daughter. Anthony was travelling around in his car to Hartlepool, Middlesbrough, York, Leeds and Harrogate. The court also heard how Melissa had been brutally stabbed 35 times, but it also stated that she had 41 injuries to her body from a sharp object in total. The court also heard how Anthony's possessive and controlling behaviour had become increasingly worse, leading up to Melissa's murder. They also recovered a sketch drawing depicting the scene at the house where Melissa's body was found. Like I said, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, and he was in fact sentenced to a hospital order. So Anthony was assessed by various different doctors, and they did say that he did in fact suffer from paranoid schizophrenia, and this is why he was sentenced to a hospital order. But the prosecutors, they were like, nah, I'm not having that. I want him to go to prison. The crime he committed was so brutal, he needs to go to prison for what he did. But this wasn't the case. Because he had paranoid schizophrenia and he was very mentally ill at the time, he actually got a hospital order. And the judge said that I am satisfied at this stage that the defendant is still suffering from a mental disorder and that the mental disorder which the defendant is suffering of this nature, that this makes it appropriate for him to be detained in a hospital for treatment. He said that it seems on the evidence that he had heard that appropriate medical treatment will be available to him. It was also explained that his hospital order is under very tight restrictions as well. And so this means that he's only able to be released if authorities are in agreement with specialist psychologists and they deem him safe to be released. The court then heard some more devastating news that Liam, Melissa's 21-year-old brother, was understandably so traumatized and heartbroken from what he had seen that day when he was the first person to find Melissa and try to save her life through CPR. He said that seeing his sister lay there with her eyes open, it's too much for him. He couldn't cope with it. And then sadly in November of the same year, just a couple of weeks after he turned 21, Liam sadly took his own life. He left a note saying that He wanted to be with his sister and he could no longer cope with what had happened. The judge said that it was highly regrettable and had the alarm been raised straight away, as it ought to have been, what had occurred could have been avoided. So he also said that Anthony killing Melissa, who showed devotion as a mother to their children, she was a very talented florist, had a devastating effect on the family and friends, and in fact, the death of her brother, which is such a tragedy. He said that no sentence that he pass will lessen or ease their pain. So it turns out that David and Liam were not the first people to discover Melissa's body. Anthony's family members, a couple of his family members, they actually went round Melissa's house. I think Anthony got in touch with them when he left the property, and then obviously they were worried and they went round the house. They then discovered Melissa's body. They then decided that they were going to leave, and they did. And then they went and got Anthony an appointment with a solicitor. Now, as you can imagine, people went crazy about this, especially because Melissa was brutally murdered in such a horrific way, and Liam discovered his sister's body and tried to save her life by giving her CPR, and that traumatized him so badly that he ended up taking his own life. This could all have been avoided if they would have reported what they saw instead of just going to book an appointment with a solicitor. So Tracy, obviously, she was wondering what the hell is going on. She wants justice. She wants justice for their actions of not reporting Melissa's murder. However, just because they walked in, saw her and left, the Crown Court prosecution, they said, and the police said, that legally they didn't do anything wrong by failing to call emergency services. Tracy said that when she was told that they had found Melissa and just walked out of the house and left her there, she said, I just couldn't get my head around it. How could they have seen what they did and just leave her? And then to have no action taken against them for what they did. She was like, I've gone crazy. I just can't understand it. However, when the judge read out in court what they had done, and no one could understand what they'd done, and then for no action to be taken against them, she said, is the justice system saying that if you discover a dead body, especially if it's a clear crime scene that a murder has been committed, can you just ignore it? You just don't have to tell anyone, she said. And then she said that a lot of people had the same opinion as her. She said, hearing my son shout, paramedic, paramedic, and rush to give his sister CPR, that is shock, she said. That is an instant reaction any normal person would have, not to walk out of the property and then make an appointment with a solicitor. She said, that's not normal. She said, it is just wrong. And I'm glad everyone else think the way she does, because she don't feel so crazy now. And that's just awful that she actually ever felt that way as well. It's just horrible. So the Northumbria police said that the circumstances around the discovery of the body were considered. However, no offence had been committed. A family statement said that though we have tragically lost Melissa's brother Liam, they were exceptionally close. He was a pure soul. He had a quiet and gentle nature, but after what happened to Melissa, he just couldn't find peace, and we had to watch him fade away. The night we lost Mel, it was like we lost them both. He just couldn't accept that she had gone. We are living in such mixed emotion, and during this time we are unable to grieve. I always hope she would grow up, just as she did, Tracy said. She made me feel so proud every day. I feel privileged to call her my daughter. She could light up any room with her smile. I wish I could just see her once more. We all miss her so much, it's painful. Thinking of her last moments, thinking of her fighting for her life, the fear she must have felt, the guilt as a mother is overwhelming at times. That I just wasn't there to help her. Melissa's mum, Tracy's speaking about Melissa. Tracy is actually now caring for Melissa's children, and that's really lovely to hear. The family said that Melissa was a vivacious, outgoing girl. Nothing got her down. She always strived to achieve the best in life. She had passed her florist grades and she was planning to open up her own flower shop. She was absolutely doting on her children all the time, and she was a big family person. She loved all occasions and was always the first at the door with flowers and gifts. Her family was everything to her. Melissa had a real charge for love, a real happy person, her family said. Now, in a bid to help ease the pain of paying for a second funeral for Liam, there was a place called Community Corner that was run by mother and daughter Lynn Davis and Cheryl McDonald, and they stepped in and paid for the service. But the family were still having stress put on them. So now it is believed that relatives might be dealt another blow and learn that Anthony Ross could be applying for an unsupervised leave from the secure hospital. And this was less than 3 years after he had been committed. But I couldn't see anything that had happened, and I don't think that he actually has ever left that hospital. The Ministry of Justice, they did say that they can't comment, obviously, on individual cases, and restricted patients may be allowed temporary into the community at the request of doctors and only after extreme, tough risk assessments. And like I said, the newspapers, everywhere I looked, I couldn't see that he had been allowed any day release. So there is a petition to stop this from happening, so he's never allowed to be released. And I will leave the link for that if you want to sign that. Now, David, Melissa's stepdad, his niece, Nikki, she just really wanted to do something nice for the family because obviously they've been through so much, and now they have these little children that's not got a mum anymore or an uncle. And so Nikki wanted to do something really lovely on their behalf. So she set up a GoFundMe page. And this was really to try and get money for things like holidays for the kids, for anything that Melissa would have done for her kids, this money would have paid for. And obviously, if they had any left over, that would have go to like their schooling and stuff. So actually, Nikki should be really proud of herself because it's said that she raised £7,500 for Melissa's children, which is amazing. It's just amazing. So I just want to say thank you ever so much for listening to today's episode. I will try and find some helplines down below if you are suffering from mental health. But today, I want to dedicate this episode to Melissa and Liam, and Tracy and David and Demi and Nikki and everybody else who is a part of that family and friendship group. My heart goes out to this family, as do all of the cases I cover. But in particular, this case really struck a chord with me today. So I want to dedicate my episode to them. Much love, everyone, and I'll see you all again in a few days.